Wonderful. Good B3 people out there, ladies and gentlemen of whatever gender you prefer. My name is Johannes Grenzfurtner. It is a casual Friday, a pre-recording. That's why I'm wearing my Hawaii shirt. It's wonderful to have you on the stream. My name is Johannes Grenzfurtner. I'm an artist and pop culture expert. I do lots of different things. I founded an art and technology group called Monochrome many years ago, 3 decades ago. So I've been doing lots of different projects in a lot of different fields. And it is a pleasure today being able to host the interview or the presentation of Paul Jones, because I'm also a long time gamer. So I actually started in the 1980s with like Sierra Online adventure games and all of that stuff. So I hope we'll also be able to talk a little bit about the history of computer games, but a brief introduction of who Paul Jones is. So Paul Jones is an art director at Cloud Imperium Games and has been a gaming veteran for 25 years with lots of experience in different gaming studios across the UK and the US. And he is working on Star Citizen, which is the largest ever crowdfunded game. We'll talk about that a little bit, but he's also writing the ultimate guide for aspiring gaming artists in the games industry. So I would like to give a big applause and shout out to Paul. Hello, good to see you.
Hi, that was quite the introduction.
Yeah, well, it's exciting because I know a lot of my friends are somewhere in the gaming industry or are games in games academia, so do a lot of research, like Ian Bogost and guys like that. So it's good to have you on the show, so to speak.
Oh, thank you.
I would like to, so first of all, I mean, I'm wearing my NCOM hat just for you. I'm not sure if you know the reference.
You're probably a bigger gamer than me.
Yeah, no, that's Tron. So like that's kind of like how my interest in gaming started in like 1982.
Yeah.
When I watched Tron.
I think the important thing to know about me is that my parts of my I have like a 64 kilobit memory. So anything that sort of comes in new, something drops off the back end. So yeah, I definitely am a veteran, but I think there's a lot of stuff I've just dumped in the past. But yeah, Tron, I loved that. I loved the motorcycles. I think they were like sort of vehicle design was probably the favorite part for me.
Wonderful. So what's the time when you actually started being interested in computer games yourself? So what generation of computer gaming history is when you jumped in?
Oh, you want to go that far back?
Yeah, I want to.
That feels like the sort of start of time for me. I guess I was about 7. I think it was. I was 7 years old. I had a Commodore VIC-20.
Oh wow!
And so we're going way back, and at one point I even bought it was called a Super RAM pack, and it took it up to 3K, and that basically meant you could draw a circle, and you could do some graphics on it. So you could draw some lines, you could draw some circles, and this was just like a revelation to me. And so bless my mum. It was my mum who'd bought this for me, and she probably regrets it to this day, because I just hammered it. I was on that thing all the time, and you had, obviously you had the tape recorder, and then you had your little joystick, and I just went through joysticks that were just like bits of joystick debris through my childhood, basically. Joysticks just weren't capable of coping with the pounding. But then, I mean, after that, I upgraded, and I bought myself a Spectrum Plus and ZX Spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so me and my friend, because I lived in a village, like I'm from the Isle of Man, and there wasn't a lot to do. There was obviously a lot of countryside, very beautiful, but I had this one friend, and he'd also got a Spectrum, and it was back in the day again when you had the tape recorders and you had a DIN lead, and then you had to sort of measure the volume of your cassette, what it was playing at, because if it was too loud, it wouldn't load properly. I mean, there was just ridiculous things you had to do to get a game to load. And so I kind of, I've been gaming for a long time. I mean, it depends on how long you want to talk about it and how many machines you want to talk about. I mean, there was the Atari ST, and then moving on to PCs. But I think the Atari ST age was really good. Like, that was in my teenage years. I mean, do you remember Xenon 2?
Xenon 2 Mega Blast, of course.
Yeah.
With the wonderful, wasn't like the soundtrack like a ripoff of John Carpenter or something like that, but there was really good soundtrack.
Bomb the Bass, I think it was, and who was it made by? The Bitmap Brothers, I think it was. And so those graphics were just like, to me back then, I was just like, oh, this is stunning. Like, I couldn't even, it was hard to like grasp how these guys had even made it. And me and my friend, we just hammered that along with, did you ever play Bubble Bobble?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, in my case, it was my friends had, like Commodore 64s, and they had Ataris and stuff like that. My first personal computer was a personal computer. So I had an AT286 with like 6 megahertz or 12 megahertz. I think you could like switch to the fast mode and get 12 megahertz.
Yeah.
That was in 86 or 87, something like that. So I was 11 or 12 when I got my first real computer. But the cool thing was that just a year later, I got my first modem. So I was online very early. So and I played all the BBS games then, and had this like chats with people on the other side of the globe. And I was sitting in my little village in Austria. But the interesting thing was that although I had a really expensive like AT286 with like 20 megabytes hard drive, I still went to my friends to play the games on the C64 and their little cheap computers, because there were not that many good computer games for the PC back then. So in my first so it was kind of like a dead zone for good computer games. And I started, as I mentioned in my intro, my first real love with computer games on the PC started with Zero Online games, like Space Quest and King's Quest and all these graphic adventure games. And I'm still like a big buff for graphic adventure games. I like as a project of my art collective that I'm part of, Monochrome. So we did a couple of graphic adventure games a couple of years ago, and where we tried to fill in this like spot between it's like point and click adventure games, but as if there would already be the possibility to embed real photographs and real graphics into the game. So it was kind of like a mixed retro game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that was very interesting for me. But in general, just like, would you pick like from the 1980s? What are your 3 favorite games of the 1980s? So we heard already. I'm not sure if that's favorite games, but you mentioned Xenon, you mentioned Bubble Bobble. What are things that would you say really shaped the way you think about computer gaming? Maybe still when you think back about that time.
I think. Of course, there wasn't, in the Isle of Man, there were 2 shops, not 2 shops in the whole of the Isle of Man, but there were 2 shops that sold video games. So there were, your sort of supply was quite limited. So it was depending on what was coming across on the boat, etc. We obviously mentioned Xenon, and we've mentioned Bubble Bobble. I think we were pretty obsessive into me and my friend about the games we played. We basically just tried to get as high as possible, and it was almost like a weekly thing. I know that we played a lot more, but I think it was also just stuff. what was it, like when Mortal Kombat came out? And I remember there was a magazine. I guess it's still going, isn't it? Edge magazine. I think I've probably got like number 3 of Edge magazine. Like, and this was on the cover, and we were just looking at it, and also Donkey Kong. And we were just like looking at the graphics, and we were just like, how are they doing this? What, like, because we just didn't have the knowledge, didn't have really any experience of graphics. We were both artists, and we both had airbrushes, and we were both sort of monkeying away, just sort of doing our artwork. He was a far better artist than me, it was kind of funny that I went into the games industry as an artist, and he didn't. I think I probably would have expected him to do it, but it was. I think it was. I'd always. That was probably the most sort of influential thing, and then it was kind of. I kind of left it for a while. There was quite a big block of time where gaming was left to the side, and I think it was, I don't know, probably money. I guess it was down to that. Couldn't buy a new system. I went to university. I know I'm digressing here, but there was a big sort of blank spot of gaming history for me, where I was just like, I'm just not in this. And it was only when I went to university, I did a degree, and it was design with applied technology. It was like industrial design. And they had a small studio in there full of silicon graphics and machines. And this was just like, wow, what's this? And of course we'd seen Tron. There were a couple of movies, obviously, a lot of sort of sci-fi stuff that I was drawn towards. And even though it wasn't part of our degree, we managed to sort of sneak into the lab and get onto the computers. And I've still got it because I took a camera in with me, and that was how you could get a picture of this stuff. And I've got a picture of the very first 3D that I did, which is pretty funny. I mean, it's basically a vase, and because I'd managed to work out how to do a lathe, and it was on a wooden block. And then I did an inverted donut, and that was we're just talking a torus shape. And then I did a space base in 3D. So there was this little space base on this very low polygon geometric sort of background, very sort of faceted. And that reminds me, there was one other amazing game back in the day called Virus, and it was you had this little polygonal spaceship. It kind of looked a bit like a Tesla truck mixed with like a flying saucer, and you flew over this landscape, and there were these other little guys that were infecting the landscape. I don't know if you ever played it. I think that was probably on the ST, but it was quite a hard navigation system with the mouse. But once you got it, it was amazing. Like, you could do tricks. I was just flying over this landscape. Oh, I just loved it. Like, it was, I just played in that. And that, I think that definitely influenced my first little foray into 3D.
Oh, yeah. No, it's interesting because on the ST there was lots of vector-based stuff. I remember like games with shooting with tanks and stuff like that. Stuff like that didn't really exist on the PC, or if it was on the PC, it was kind of But
yeah, I think I also spent a lot of time in the arcade, like that time where there was sort of. There weren't that many video games for us to choose from, so I'd be in the arcade just sort of playing whatever it was, Outrun, or you name it. It was our local arcade was actually really quite good, quite surprisingly, and so we used just to stick all our pocket money into that. And especially when all the arcade machines sort of turned into the bigger stuff, so you could you'd be in like a flight simulator, and you'd take off, and it would flip you upside down as you took off from the carrier. I can't remember the name of the video of that game, but there was some great stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What I found always very interesting, and I'm not sure if you agree with me that that changed, but in the early days, in the 80s, in the 90s, maybe even in the early 2000s, when I was kind of like a computer gaming nerd back then, and also um, generally like a tech nerd, I kind of knew a lot about the hardware that I had. So I knew every little, like I when I needed better sound, I got a sound blaster, I got this, or like I kind of like there was a lot of course, it wasn't really DIY because I didn't build my
Mm,
chipsets, but I knew exactly what kind of hardware I had, what I could expand, what I could buy or not. So I kind of have the feeling that lots of people who were into computers back then knew a lot more what they were actually using hardware wise. And nowadays it seems that you just like you go, you just you buy the next Apple that you have, but it's
yeah,
not that you know a lot about what's inside your machine, so to speak.
yeah. I mean, definitely. I remember building my own. Well, I wasn't building my own PC because my sort of route into the industry was, I guess, probably not typical. Um, I kind of like my first job was a kitchen designer, and we would do it by hand on drawing boards and do perspective drawings of kitchen layouts. That was my first job,
But
and
that's like 3D rendering, like with
yeah, I mean, it
yeah,
was the
paper.
start, right? It was the gateway drug, and I really loved it. And I got, the company started to hit hard times, so I was laid off, and I had a bit of a portfolio, but not very, like looking back, not very good. It wasn't very good, and I applied to Ocean Software in Manchester, and they were doing, they were the big Manchester company, and they were doing, at the time they were working on Jurassic Park, and I got an interview, and I was just like, oh, great, I'm in, let's go for this, and of course didn't get the interview. I really just, I just didn't know anything about games, about making games, and but the poor guy, I remember his name today. What was his name? Steve Wahid, and I just quizzed him. I just after the interview, I just said, "What software are you using? What hardware are you using? How much memory?" And I just got all the specs from him. And even though I didn't get the job, um, and it was funny. I was just talking to my mum this week, and she was like, "I remember when you came back, and you said, I'm gonna buy a PC. I'm gonna get into games." And that's kind of the avenue I went on. So I had some money from an inheritance. So my father passed when I was 9 years old, so I'd had some money sort of put away since then. And so I had this little pot of gold, and I was like, right, I'm going to buy a PC. I'm going to buy a copy of 3DS Max. So it was going to cost me I think it was going to cost me about four grand or something ridiculous, because the software was quite expensive, and it still is. And I called up a local reseller of 3DS Max, and he started asking me all these questions about what my degree was, what I was going to do with the software, what my plans were. And turns out he was sort of like this local businessman, and he had an accountancy software company, but on the side he sold AutoCAD and Autodesk products, and he wanted to set up a little 3D division. So I didn't get into games initially, but that's how I got into 3D, because basically he said, well, after an interview with him, he said, I tell you what, we'll give you all the hardware and all the software that you need. You train yourself up, and we'll do some projects. So I didn't get paid like for the first 3 months. Then I was on £50 a week, and then it was £100 a week. So it was no money at all, but I had access to everything I need, and every time I needed more memory, he would just buy it and plug it in, and we did some ridiculous projects. Like, he was a really good salesman, and he would make all sorts of promises, and so we started doing flying logos for people, and then we did visualization for B&Q, a big DIY company, and then we did Wembley Stadium. They were doing a proposal for an opening, like a roof section that opens and closes, and so that was probably by the end of the first year, we were doing some crazy projects, and I still didn't really know what I was doing, but we were just flying properly by the seat of our pants. He would get in a big project, and then me and then another guy would just sort of slowly work it out. Between the three of us, we'd fudge together some kind of amazing presentation and hand it over to the client. And I think that was sort of that was the first foot into sort of me sort of, from that I had a lot of knowledge then in sort of terms of firefighting and many different things, so animation, VFX, rendering, texturing, modeling, animation. So that was my intro into sort of 3D basically, but not your sort of typical route.
Yeah, I remember back then, I'm still proud of it, that I think the one software, like in that time frame that I had that software, I think the one software I pirated in my life that was like the most valuable was AutoCAD. I never used it for anything. I was just like so happy. Oh my God, I have like 35 floppy disks and it's all AutoCAD. And I installed it on my hard drive. And I never used it. I have no idea what to do with it, but it was so precious. Oh, I literally have like thousands and thousands of shillings in my hands. And never did anything with it.
There was a time where it was just how much pirate software could you get? It was like the more that you could download, the better you felt. You didn't use it, like you say,
Right.
and in those early days, I didn't have any pirated stuff. I didn't have any connections. Like I was just like, I literally was like a freshie. Like I was just like, it was like a whole new world to me, and I was just sort of stumbling through basically.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, so did you ever at any point really like think that you would succeed in the gaming industry? So when you bought your PC, when you had your pot of gold,
Yeah.
Oh my God! Did you at that point kind of like, was that kind of like your big dream to do that, or did you expect it that it would really happen at some point?
I mean, it's a really good question. I think there was a good part of my life where I just sort of wandered through. Like I didn't like, it would be like I would have an idea and then I would just do it. Like there wasn't the self-doubt back then. And maybe it was because I didn't maybe it was easier because there was the internet wasn't really, it was hardly going back then. You weren't, I don't know, like I think it was literally as simple as I'm going to do this and let's see how it goes. And I mean, it's quite a beautiful thing, really. I mean, there was no self-doubt. It was just let's just give it a go. And I think that's just classic. You don't know what you don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's you're just like, this looks cool. Like they're doing it, so I'm going to do it. Let's have a go at it. And I think that those initial 2 years of me learning 3D was a real sort of good training ground, testing ground, basically, for sort of, because even by the end of it, I was training people. Like my boss he'd set up a little training school called Cyberspace School, I think it was, something like that. And he would bring in clients and they were paying something ridiculous like £500 a day. And I was teaching them 3ds Max. And all I was doing was teaching them what I'd learned in the manual, except I didn't need the manual anymore, because there was no online tutorials back then. And so
it's kind of like fake it till you make it to a certain degree.
Yeah, and then it kind of got even more ridiculous because after that, I'd kind of had enough. I was just like, I don't think this is really going anywhere. I didn't really like the sort of it was a bit ad hoc how the projects were run and stuff. I wanted a little more structure, so I thought, right, this is it. I'm going to get into games, and so I quit, and I spent 3 months redoing my portfolio, re-rendering stuff, getting everything onto. I made a little, like, it was like a multimedia sort of presentation. So when you loaded, I burnt it to disk. When you loaded it up, you could choose your music. You could choose what visuals you wanted to see, and it was a bit of an experience. And I applied. I started applying to recruiters, and for what, I can't actually remember the source reason, but at the time I decided that I wanted to go to work in Japan, and so that was my next thing. I was gonna get a game, and I was gonna get a job in Japan. Boom, off, let's go. And I got a job. Had an interview, and it was for a company called Koei, and it's that center. Where's my finger? Center disc there.
Nice.
Soul Master, it was called. And the premise was that we would train. I would move to Stroud in the south of England. They would train us up, and then we'd move to Japan and work for Koei. And so I.
Well, tell us a little bit about culture shock.
Well, the culture, there was no culture shock, because this was the hilarious part, right? So there were 6 of us, and we were working in Softimage, and we were animating these. The characters were 250 polygons, and the textures were something like 128 by 256 pixels, and we had all very tight requirements for animation stuff, and it was a great little team. But after the second month, it was like, not everybody's going to go to Japan, but Paul, you're still going. And then another 2 months went by. Only like 4 of you going to go, or 3 of you, but Paul, you're still going. And then 6 months in, Paul, it's just you'll still be going, but we're nearly done. And then all the work's nearly done by this point. It was quite.
It's almost like training to be a samurai, but you never can do it.
Yeah, and it was just this ridiculous time where I was just like, okay, well, that's not happening, and then also another pivotal. This was another pivotal point for me was. My girlfriend at the time, who is my wife now, she got pregnant, and so at the time I was still like, well, I'm still going. Like, I was so focused. She's always said I'm a workaholic. I say I'm focused, and I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to Manchester, and we'll be a family, and then we'll just see what happens there. And so I call up my friend. I call up my old boss, the one that gave me this crazy training for free, with all his equipment. And he's like, "Oh, we're setting up a games company in Manchester. Do you want to be part of it?" And I was just like. And I was just like, hell yeah! I was number 6. I think I was number 6 through the door, basically. And this was Warthog, basically.
Okay.
And it was amazing. I mean, again, it was just, again, that was just another. Again, Paul just being a bit blinkered, like just going, okay, let's just do this. Let's work on this sci-fi game for Chris Roberts called Starlancer, whatever that is. Let's make sci-fi. And my responsibility was basically all the, you basically would navigate through 2 large capital ships. And it was kind of like a QuickTime VR, so you could choose your path, pre-rendered. I'd never done anything like this before, and it was the full characters, environments, lighting, VFX, and just every route. There was like in a bunk room, there was 5 places you could sit, and so you'd have to work out how to get from A to B to C to D, and then all the permeations for each position, and they all had to line up. I mean, I think I rendered 40,000 frames. I drove myself insane. I mean, it was just, looking back, it was the hint of my sort of workaholic kind of feel. Like I would be in the studio at midnight. I would come home, have dinner, get back on my motorbike, ride 20 minutes to the office, go into the building, check all the render stations were working because I didn't have remote access, make sure everything was still going, get back on my bike, go home, and I would do that for like days on end.
Oh my. Ay. Well, I mean, but I guess, the stuff never changes really. So, like, I just recently thought about, like, oh, well, yeah, back then I remember, like copying discs and discs and discs because everything was on stupid floppy disks. And nowadays it's just like, like 3 days of downloads because you have to download like a terabyte file or something like that. I don't know. It's just like everything you're still waiting. Computer is about waiting.
Yeah, it still is, and it's there's a couple of times where I've been caught out recently where I've installed the game, or I thought I've installed it, and then you go to play it, and then it has to do an additional install, and you're just like, what is going on here? Like, I've got an hour, I've got a spare hour, like, come on. And 30 minutes later it's like it's ready, and then it takes you through all the intros, and I'm just like, but there's been a couple of games where I've just been like, do you know what, I've got no patience for you now. I'm off. Sometimes I'm really fickle. I'm just like, I'm out. And then
please insert disc 3. Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, the days of huge floppy disks, not huge floppy disks, but piles of floppy disks. And I was telling my son
but also
about
CD-ROMs. Sometimes like games were like on 20 CD-ROMs. I remember. I don't know what was it. It's like a Blade Runner. It was kind of like it was a Blade Runner adventure game or something like that, and it was on various like various like CD-ROMs, and you had to flip the CD-ROMs and stuff like that. But my question now would be, because you're working on, or I'm not sure, is it already published or is still working on your book?
I'm still working on it, so I'm on my.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question would be, if you compare, like talking about all the nostalgic stuff that we have done right now, but comparing like the times back then and nowadays, of course, a lot changed. Like in 25 years of gaming experience and being part of an industry is also like, I mean, the world changed. We live in a different world, and like computer gaming back then was a very nerdy hobby, and now it's kind of like a mass mainstream market that is bigger than Hollywood. So your book is, as far as I understand, it should be a guideline or like something like hints and tips for people who want to get into the gaming industry. So could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yep. It's basically it's a guide. It's a guidebook for artists, especially people looking to get into the industry, but also people who are fairly new to the industry. I mean, the industry is a little bit of a black box still. It's quite hard to find solid information, and in this age of fake news everywhere, and there's a lot of negativity about certain parts of the industry. I just got to the point where I was just like, it was as simple as I just wanted to help, basically. It was, I've got to this point where I've made quite a few mistakes through my career. I mean, obviously, I've had a lot of successes, but there's been a lot of stupid things that I've done, through just not knowing. And so basically, this is a culmination of 25 years of experience, sort of compressed down into a very clear timeline. So it's split into basically, trying to get a job, your interview, getting your job, what's your first week like? Nobody ever really talks about it. What are the sort of things you're expected to do? And it also goes from junior artist, mid artist, senior artist to principal, lead, and art director. And it just gives you an idea of what shifts over time, because a lot of the time it's unspoken. And so there are a million tutorials on making artwork and pushing pixels and improving shaders and you name it, and it's out there on YouTube. But there isn't one solid resource for all of these things that you're not taught, because there are a lot of things that you're not taught at university. And so it's basically, it's kind of like, treat it like you're going on an expedition, and it's all about the preparation. You wouldn't climb Everest without doing your prep. And this is all about the prep and the knowing, and then having the right people with you, and sort of doing your reading. So as you advance, hopefully, I mean, this is the grand scheme of things, right? Is that ultimately we'll get a new generation artists that are already more prepared for when they hit the industry. So ultimately, everything will level up.
Yeah, it's almost like it sounds like creating your Dungeons and Dragons character to enter the industry.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, obviously it's down to your personality whether you level up your pixel skills or your shader skills or your VFX skills. But this is like, okay, watch out for this. Don't do that. When you take on this role, your whole world is going to shift, and for these reasons. Because normally you're in the industry and you just sort of see your people ahead of you, and you're just like, oh yeah, I can do that. I'll give that a shot. But you don't really know what they do. They're busy, and it's only when you get into that role you're just like, oh. I'm really not prepared for this. And, it's a trial by fire thing. So it's kind of just wanting to give people a real good heads up about the kind of things they'll face. Because, I mean, it is a great time to be in the games industry. It seems to be, touch wood, COVID proof. And, I mean, I can't speak for other games companies, but I know, Star Citizen hasn't really skipped a beat. Like, everybody just moved home. I think it's been obviously it's been trickier for IT and stuff, but everybody else is just like, yep, on we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you actually, a good point. Could you tell us a little bit about Star Citizen? What for people who don't know it? Yeah, non-nerds.
So Star Citizen is basically, I think it's now in its 8th year. I'm coming up for 7 years, and it is a crowdfunded project. I think its claim to fame is that it's the largest crowdfunded gaming project in the world. It's a sci-fi product, and it's continually live, so you can download it now, basically, and you can buy a spaceship, and you can go fly, and you can mine, and you can trade, and but it's in alpha. So, the thing to understand, and I think what a lot of people sort of miss, is brand new games of this size take a huge amount of time. And so a lot of people are frustrated with Star Citizen because it's like, why is it not finished? Why is it not ready? Well, even on, looking back, some projects, like you can get them done in 2 years. That's fine if they're like a follow-on. But this is the perfect storm of new IP, new technology, massive scale, multiple studios, and that's just a huge amount of work. So often what happens is, a new IP might take 6 years to make, 4 to 6 years, but that's going on in the background. So you've got another product already ahead that people are looking at and is shiny and they're playing. So they don't really get to experience the full dev cycle. They might be aware of like the last couple of years. Whereas Star Citizen has been very sort of forward facing. It's always been honest about what it's doing. There's a million videos of who we are, what we do. It goes into the nuts and bolts of us talking about sort of our journey, and that's very much been the sort of success, I think, of Star Citizen, is that people have been able to get on board and literally just follow us through. I mean, it's rare that you'll know the names of people on a project other than maybe the head of it and maybe like the head producer or something. But on Star Citizen, you can there's a good amount of us that have been on camera, and you can just look us up and really get an idea of what we're working on. So that's my spiel.
Yeah. I cannot complain. Wonderful.
I mean, it is a crazy, it's a crazy project. I mean, it's we work on some awesome stuff. I think one of your other panelists is Gavin Rothery. So he's just made his film, but I've been working with him for now over 6 years making spaceships.
Oh, he's part of your team, because I will interview him later on.
Yeah.
So it's good. Okay, then I learned to know all you guys.
Yeah, so it's been great, and I think when I took on the role of because I was hired. Again, it was another similar situation. Aaron called me into a room because we used to work on Lego together. He was like, "Chris is setting up a new project. Do you want to work on it?" And I was like, and I'd already started thinking about maybe shifting onto something not more interesting, but sci-fi related. I normally have like a hit list, and this that hit list back then was sci-fi, next gen engine, local. And then basically Aaron was like, "Here, it's all here. We can let's do this game." And so it was hard to sort of build up an art team, and which is something I've always wanted to do. I kind of after leaving Epic, that was one of my things. I enjoy hiring good people, and so we basically wanted to build a dream team.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, that's for all kinds of, because I'm a filmmaker, which is like I'm doing lots of different projects, but filmmaking is always a teamwork, and if you pick the wrong team, everything is going to hell. It just like does not work. I mean, you can, of course, it is possible in a strange environment with people you don't really know to work, but it's not the optimal solution for anything.
No. And I think, I mean, the games industry is a little different to the film industry in terms of, you like to sort of keep your staff around, or at least I think I feel like it is that, it's in game teams, you want to, because there's a huge amount of knowledge that's proprietary to that game, and you want to keep it within. So even if you do get people that aren't performing, it's about, okay, how do we fix them? Like what's going wrong? What do we do? And that's definitely something I've sort of leveled up these last few years. Not just my art skills. I mean, I've never been so productive than when I've been on Star Citizen. I've never dealt with so much artwork. I mean, it's been insane, in a good way, but also I've really sort of been pushing on developing managerial skills, I guess, the soft skills basically, and that's something that also can't be really learned from a YouTube tutorial. That is just hard, at least for me anyway. That's just hard doing the hard time and working with yourself, working out what your vulnerabilities are, and then how you can sort of get past that, and then how does that apply to the people that you work with, because often situations is as much about how you respond, right, as actually what the situation is. So just increasing that flexibility and that empathy. I think if people exercised more empathy, the world would definitely be a better place.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like given the whole debate, in COVID times of mask wearing, like I mean, I do it at least if you're not doing for yourself, do it for someone else.
Yes, yes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So Star Citizen has been a definite leveling up for me, for sure.
Wonderful. So what are your next steps? Next step number one would be finishing the book, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, of course, Star Citizen in the day and then book in the evening. So I've got I have an editor and a schedule that I'm working towards, and so I generally work three or four times a week in the evening. I kind of made my life more difficult because I committed to doing 12 posters as well that are kind of sort of cautionary tales of the industry. I think it'll be quite interesting when they're done. And they're sort of, they sort of tie in with the book, but they also hark back to old school graphics, but done in they're rendered in Keyshot, so it's in like a obviously new software, but old graphics. It's kind of an interesting twist. So, and I've been doing my website, and so trying to get everything into place, ready for the book launch. So I'm hoping that, let's say, it would be nice if it was April next year. I guess that'll be my birthday. I'll turn 50, which is a bit scary.
Well, but as long as you're happy about what you're doing, there's no age.
Oh yeah, I mean,
as old as you feel.
You always have to be moving. Like I always like to be moving forward, basically. So, I think the whole COVID thing has been interesting for me because there was a period where you can't be a creative machine all the time, can you? You can't constantly output. It takes takes something out of you, basically. So I think with working from home and not having that commute, and sort of the stress of the office, I found it a lot easier. Like working from home is way, way easier. And I've also just, had more time to do more art projects for myself. Like I read a really good book because there was a point where I was just like, I was hitting the wall again. It's happened a couple of times in my life where I've just, I've had one serious burnout about 10 years ago. This time it was just, there were sort of hints of it, but it's just like, I can get on top of this. And I read a really good book called You Got This by Dr. Ivan Joseph. He's like a sort of sports coach, but works really well. It's sort of his message. And so I just took that on. I was like, yeah, I can do this. Just get my head back in the game. Let's just have some fun. Like have some fun making some 3D. If it turns out crap, it turns out crap. I don't have to post it on the internet. I don't need people to tell me that it's rubbish if it is rubbish. And just giving yourself that freedom to fail, basically. And just been downloading tutorials. So next year it'd be nice. What I want to do is sort of learn to do sort of more traditional digital painting. So move away from 3D. And just try and sort of investigate that sort of looseness that sort of comes with that style of art, and just see what happens. Because I've always been quite what I'd call a tight artist. It's been quite, it's very precise.
Yeah, but it sounds good because you're publishing a book pretty much like helping young artists. So you're kind of like on the one side you're also getting like being 50 next year, so you're kind of like an elder statesman already, and wanting to give something on and helping new talents. But at the same time, of course, you never stop being creative. I guess like most creative people, they will just like be creative until they just like drop dead. I guess that's how it is.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's kind of I think maybe that is just the creative way. I've always had that sort of philosophy, and I think because of my dad dying super early, I always had that sort of philosophy of life is too short. Like I don't want to be doing stuff that I don't like, because you never know what's around the corner. And it's not that I'm trying to get to do something better. It's just that I don't want to sit around being bored, and I don't want to while I'm on this earth, I just want to progress. I want to do cool stuff, and I want to meet good people, and I just want to just slowly keep inching forward. Sometimes it's really slow, right? Sometimes it's the speed of a glacier. But as long as you're moving forward, then
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's like in art history, there's this really good example. A friend of mine told me that there's, I'm pretty sure you know Albrecht Dürer, like the painter from like medieval times, and with his hair, he was like one of the most famous like drawings in art history is this like drawing of a hare, and he only did that because at some point in his life he had so much free time because he was so good in his main job, like painting Jesuses, that he could set aside some time to just like make studies of animals and drawing hares, because the people who paid him for what he was doing, they were, like aristocrats for portraits, or the church was ordering another Jesus or something like that. But he was making so much money with it. At the same time, he got some free time, so he started really like doing extremely well crafted drawings of animals that nobody was paying him for, because nobody was paying him to paint animals, like or draw animals. Like, why the fuck does anyone need drawings of animals, But he had time to do that, and that only came because he established like his position in the industry, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you have to have that balance. You have to have that. I mean, yeah, there's a big block of my mind that is dedicated to spaceships and all sorts of crazy things. How does this toilet work? How does this landing gear work? Or what's going wrong here, and how do we fix it? But yeah, you need that. You need something else to offset it. So yeah, in terms of digital work, yeah, that's what I do. And the book has been a really good sort of, I mean, it's a creative endeavor, isn't it? It's just a different thing. And my wife's a writer, so it's helped because at times I'm just like, I don't know if I'm doing good or bad here. And she's like, it doesn't matter. Just keep writing. Just write it. And then she's like, then you go back and you rewrite it, and then you go back and you rewrite it. So I think I'm on my third draft. I've probably got another 2 to go, and then I've got to go through all my beta readers. Well, I say all my beta readers, but I've got to get it tested.
That's the thing with writing. It's like the same here. People are always afraid starting to write something, but if you're frequently doing writing stuff like I do, you know that whatever you type, whatever you start typing, it will not be there in 3 weeks. It will be rewritten like 4 times already. So it's just like there's no way. Don't shy away from typing something. It's just it's just like, do it.
And that first draft was probably the best. Like it was just pouring out. Like I found it more difficult the refining stage of this because I get bored. I don't get bored easily. Maybe I do, but you've got to stick at it, and that's the same for everything, right? Like to get good, you've just got to log the hours, and you've just got to go through the pain barrier and hit it head on. It's sometimes it is a bit painful,
But I mean I guess like everything that you're doing as a human being, I mean it just depends on like even if you're gardening or something like that and your plants die, there is like something that you have to overcome. There is something to learn.
That is painful. I'm a gardener as well. That's my other little side project.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, that's good for the mental health, right?
I asked you what's your favorite retro computer game. What's your favorite plant?
Ooh, that's a good question. At the moment, it's the classic rose.
Really? Okay, like the red one, or
pink actually is. But I think. Ooh, that's a good question. That's like asking what's your favorite child.
No.
I think it's more like someone was saying this the other day. What's your favorite child for today? So Rose today could be Quince tomorrow, could be Delphiniums the day after. So yeah, but I'm lucky enough to have a nice little garden here, so I've been able to just, in times of stress, you just go out, just hang out with the robin, the little local robin that hangs out here, and you just get that nice balance, break from the digital world, take a breath of fresh air, and then.
No, and especially in COVID times, it's good to have a garden because I live in Vienna and I have a garden myself, which is total privilege. And I think I would have killed myself without the garden. So to step outside to see green stuff, Anyways, yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. I mean, we are already like almost at an hour of speaking time. So
really? That's gone quick.
It was very quick. Yeah, absolutely. So just for people who are interested in your work, is there like a website people can check out? Where can they check out when the book is coming out? So maybe you could give us a little bit of information about.
Yep. So basically, my website, which is all shiny and new now, and set up for the book, if people go to pauldavidjones.com, they can basically see all the work that I've done over my whole history, find out about me, and they can also sign up for a newsletter, and so they can find out how the book's progressing and then when it comes out. And so the book is called, at the moment anyway, Get Your Head in the Game, because it is all about just packing your head full of information. And yeah, watch this space.
Wonderful. Excellent. So one last question, because I completely forgot about that, but it's one of my favorite questions ever. I always ask that one. Is there some, it's a challenging one. Is there one of your opinions or one of your beliefs, let's rephrase it. What is your most radical opinion or most radical beliefs? So something that you might even like have problems with your peers, like your friends. They say like, no, this is just like nonsense. Why do you have that belief? Is there something like that?
Ooh, there might be.
Tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. You're probably more likely to get it out of me after I've been to the pub.
Okay.
Probably not here. I'm not really that sort of personality. I mean, I maybe have some things about the sort of the nature of the industry and some of its darker elements, but I mean, every industry's got dark elements, and it's just how to shine a light on them, and how to remove them bit by bit.
Wonderful. I mean, I couldn't have wished for a better closing statement. Thank you. Thank you so much. So it was a pleasure talking to you. I'll keep following what you're doing, and thanks for being part of B3. And because Steen is not here, our technician took off, so I have to push the button to finish.